this session so that we can share it afterward with everybody. And for those who weren't able to make it to the live session, we'll also be resharing all of the paperwork, all the sign-in sheet templates, the updated USDA program agreement, which can be filled out in hard copy or online. We'll be providing that to you all again after this meeting is over with. So perhaps just to get us started, I know we've got some Gleaner staff members on, so I want to make sure to call out Anne-Marie Reed and Sarah Kittle as our Agency Relations Coordination team. So thank you for joining on. And also, I believe we've got Christina Herrero, who is our Link to Feed lead on this call as well. So she'll be fielding some Link to Feed questions. For anybody who is using Link to Feed, we will have some more information that we'll share a little bit later on, but we'll kind of be in a holding pattern. So Christina will be able to field some questions from you around that today, but with more information to come down the road as well. So with that said, Anne-Marie, would you be willing to share and remind folks who might be a little rusty with Zoom or new to Zoom how to use our handy chat feature?
Of course. Good morning, everybody. So glad to see everybody. So if you need to chat, if you want to ask a question or even a friendly comment, we would love to hear it. So at the bottom of your screen, there are some different icons. You can go to the more, and then you can go to chat. When you click on more, the chat will come up. So you can either, once you click on chat, you can either chat to everyone, or you can push the drop down, and then the users will be listed individually. So if you want to chat privately to someone, you can click on their name and then chat with them. But if you want to chat privately, make sure you chat privately and don't just start typing, because it's going to go to all of us. Okay? All right.
All right. Thanks, Anne-Marie. So yes, please, if you have questions during the presentation, type them in the chat window, and Anne-Marie and Sarah are going to be glancing at that to make sure that we can call attention to any questions that come up that we could clarify or give more detail to. If you have a question, you know, it might be that we get to it eventually, but we will try to answer all your questions today. If we don't get to you or your question, please follow up with us, or we'll try our best to follow up with you after the meeting. Yes, thank you. Chat right there. So there will be a time for questions at the very end. We'll be going through this USDA program training and do a quick civil rights recap. And then afterward, if folks want to stick around, we'll allow for some additional time for you to be unmuted. I have you all muted right now, but I will unmute at the end if anybody has some additional questions that they would like to voice. So let's get going. I'm going to be sharing my screen now, and we'll get started with our presentation. So I'm going to ask Anne-Marie or Sarah if you can let me know if you're seeing this okay.
I can see it.
All right, wonderful. So again, this is a review for all of our pantry and food distribution partners who participate in the USDA food program. USDA food, as a reminder, is just one of the food groups that you can get from us through our shopping list and through free food. So a reminder that we've got our co-agency purchase program food products, shared maintenance food products that you'll see on the shopping list, and then the separate category of USDA food that you're able to order from us if you participate in this program. So you'll recognize this document on the right of your screen as the USDA TFAP food program agreement. It gets re-signed every year. That is one of the requirements for the program, that we need an updated signed copy from your team. Occasionally, like this time around, there are changes to it. So we'll be calling your attention to those changes this morning. A reminder again also that this is an opt-in program. So you do not have to participate in the USDA food program and be a Gleaner's partner. This is optional. If this is not worth the effort, if this is not worth your time, especially given kind of additional COVID challenges, you can still order all that other food from Gleaners, the co-agency purchase food, the shared maintenance food. But if you choose not to participate in this program, you just won't be able to receive USDA food. So just something to consider. And then again, we do ask that you re-sign this agency agreement again. I will repeat this a couple times. We're going to make this agreement available to you if you wish in hard copy via email that you can download and print, but also there's an online version that you can sign online. So we'll provide you the link to do that as well and hopefully make it a little bit easier for some folks. All right, the big changes. So one of the main reasons we're gathering right now is that changes are occurring in the USDA food program for our state, for the entire state of Michigan. So number one big change is that signatures are no longer required. We're no longer required on that sign-in self-declaration sheet to ask a client to print their signature or to have one of our staff or volunteers during COVID sign as a proxy for them. No more signatures. So that's pretty great. The second change is presents a couple more challenges. So we're going to go through that now. The big change is that we are now required to ask how a client is eligible for the USDA food program. So if you remember previous to this, using the non-discrimination statement and self-declaration form, whether a paper version or on link to feed, all a person had to do was show up to your distribution and say, I'm in need of emergency food. No other questions really asked. Fill out your name, number and household, address, signature, that's it. So the big change is now there's the eligibility requirement. So we're going to share now how people can be eligible and what this means for your food distribution. So as of October 31st, this month, we are asked to now ask for how people are eligible, and people can be eligible for USDA or TFAP food by way of the income guidelines, which, as a reminder, change every year around April. That's why we always send out updated sign-in sheets with updated income guidelines. So a family can be income eligible. For example, if it's a household of two and annually they make less than $34,480 as that household of two, then they are income eligible for this program. If they are not income eligible, they can still be eligible if they participate in other programs such as WIC for women, infants, and children, SNAP, which is the bridge card or food stamp program, CSFP, which is the program for seniors over the age of 60, think Focus Hope boxes, or not so frequent in our region, the FDPIR, which is specific to Native American reservations. Or the other program that allows them eligibility is if they have kids in their household who receive free or reduced meals at their school. So participation in or eligibility in any one of these categories makes them eligible for USDA TFAP food. It doesn't have to be all the categories, it just has to be one. And they only have to declare their need. We cannot ask for proof, verification, paperwork, nothing. This is all self-declared. We're taking them at their word that they are eligible in one of these ways. So you'll recognize this form. It's changed a little bit, and I'll show you how that looks because we did add in a category for how many kids are in a household. But you're going to see some recognizable features of this form. Place to have our non-discrimination statement, which is required on USDA materials, the income guidelines, the eligibility statement that we just reviewed about the different ways a participant could be eligible to receive this food, and the brand new columns on the right where you can check mark how a household is eligible for that program based on what they're telling you via income or participation in one of those programs. So the information on the form is technically the only information that a participant needs to provide you in order to be eligible to receive USDA food. So if you ask more information during your intake beyond what's on this form, we'll get to that in a sec, but technically this is the only information people need to provide you to be eligible for USDA food from your food distribution. All right. Okay, so here's an example of what the form might look like filled out. There's a place at the top for where you can put your agency name and address, date of the distribution. You can see below where you will be printing the person's name, the number of people in their household, if they wish to disclose how many children are in their household. So of the 3 people in their household, 1 is a child, their street address and city, and then check mark how they are eligible in that appropriate column when you ask them. Just a COVID reminder here, this should continue to be filled out by your own team members. The expectation continues to be that we are not handing papers and pens and clipboards back and forth between people, that you can continue to have your team members ask this information of the person as they walk up or drive up to your food distribution. All right. Okay, so a little bit about the suggested script. So we realize this form of intake is very new to a lot of people and could present a timing challenge. So if you have a lot of people coming through your distribution, how do you get people to come through quickly? So one suggestion for as a new client is approaching, you can start off by recording and asking them for their name, the number of people in their household, and their street address and city. And then ask them to determine their eligibility and say, in order to receive USDA food today, you must self-declare that your household meets USDA requirements for income. We're not allowed to verify your income or ask for proof. Do you currently meet these requirements? And at that point, you can show them the income guidelines, or you yourself can take a look and say, okay, well, you told me you have a household of 5. Do you make less than this amount of income on an annual or monthly basis? And if they say, yes, we meet those income guidelines, check mark, they are income eligible, and you can move them on. If the client says no, that they don't fall into one of those low income categories, you can mention to them that they could still be eligible for USDA food if they participate or a member of their household participates in one of those programs, such as SNAP, Bridge Card Food Stamp Program, WIC for Women, Infants, and Children, or CSFP, the Senior Food Boxes. So if they get Focus Hope, they're eligible. Or if they have a child in their household that receives free or reduced meals at school. So again, we cannot ask for proof of any of this. We're taking this at people's word that they do participate. And honestly, we want to make it easy enough for them to just say, yeah, I'm eligible in this way, and move on to get your food. Another potential suggestion for how to make this easy is what you know about the clients that you're serving. If you are serving in an area and you're seeing a lot of families who have kids in DPS schools, well, they're all getting free and reduced lunches at school. So that's maybe the first thing you want to ask them. Do you have a kid in school right now around this neighborhood? Yep, okay, you're program eligible because your kid is getting free and reduced school lunches. Or if you know that a big portion of the population you're serving are seniors, you can ask them, hey, do you get Focus Hope? Do you get CSFP? Check mark, you're eligible. Same thing about food stamps or the Bridge Card. If you know a lot of your clients have Bridge Card benefits, then that should be an easy check mark for eligibility. Again, we cannot ask to see their Bridge Card or pay stubs or anything to prove it out, but we just do need to ask how they are eligible. So a couple what if situations, because we know this is going to come up, but this is new to us too at Gleaners. So we ask you for a couple things. We ask you to, you know, bear with us, to provide us feedback if you're getting a lot of challenging situations, and to make suggestions. So if you have a better script, or if you're putting this into place and you have a easier way of doing things, let us know, because we'd like to share those best practices with the greater network. So a couple what if situations. I'll start with the second one. What if the client is not eligible? What if you tried to make it easy, you tried to, you know, you gave them the different forms of eligibility and they just tell you, you know what, I'm not in any of those programs, I don't have kids in school, I make higher than that amount in income right now, doesn't look like I'm eligible for the program. Technically, we can't give them USDA food if they're not eligible. That's kind of rough, and we don't want to send people away empty-handed. It is not the purpose of this program to turn people away from food. So if they're not eligible for USDA food, and if you are getting this a lot at your food distribution, let us know, first of all, but second of all, it would be a good best practice to keep food on hand that's not USDA. You should all know what you're getting from us and if it's USDA or not. So be mindful of products that you have in your inventory and consider keeping emergency bags aside for people who are ineligible so you can provide them other types of food that are not USDA. On the other end of that spectrum, so what if your program requires more information than just what's on the USDA form? So you're asking for way more than name, number and household, address, and program eligibility. For example, with Link to Feed, we ask a lot more information. Well, again, with USDA, it is the bare minimum. All a client needs to do is show up and give you those info points and their eligibility, and that's all that they need to do to get USDA food from you. So if you have greater programming involved or other grant funding and other requirements for your program that kind of make you collect more information than just this, then on the other end of the spectrum, I'd suggest keeping emergency USDA food bags aside. Because if you have a client come up and they don't want to give you any other information than the basic of what is required for USDA, then you're obligated, participating in the USDA food program, to give them USDA food. So consider having that emergency bag set aside, just USDA food that you can also hand out to that participant. And like anything, if you feel like you're not able to serve a participant in the fullest sense possible, then, you know, make sure that you're referring people out. Make sure that you're aware of what other food distributions are in your area, or let them know they can contact Gleaners or 211 through United Way. So just some examples of how you can adjust and be flexible with this program. All right. Alternatives to the paper form. So we are all so familiar with using the paper version of this form. It did go out in your email, the same email that invited you to this meeting, but we'll be sending out that updated sign-in sheet or self-declaration form again, so you have it at the top of your email. But if you use a different intake format, such as Link to Feed or your own tracking system in Excel or another computer program, there's a couple reminders here for you now. Regardless of how you track, you still must display the required USDA information at your food distributions. That includes the And Justice for All green poster, which includes the non-discrimination statement, income guidelines, the self-declaration eligibility statement of how are you eligible. All those items must be visible to your clients during the food distribution. We've got a couple of suggestions for how to make that work best, especially since we know a lot of people have to go mobile right now during COVID. We would suggest using posters or laminate signs or create, you know, A-frame or yard sign kind of placards. Anything that you can do to make sure that that information is present and somewhat visible, so that if somebody's coming up and they say to you, you know, I can't quite read that, what's on that sign? Perhaps you have a handout for them, or you can show them the income eligibility statement on your clipboard. But all that information in one form or the other has to be present at all your food distributions. We will get into a little bit more detail about agencies using Link to Feed who have a predetermined list of clients, because moving forward, we can be a little bit more specific about how verbal confirmation about continued eligibility will be helpful. So we'll get into a little bit more detail on that. And I know Christine will be able to answer some more questions about how that will probably look for our Link to Feed partners out there. And then, like always, regardless of if you're recording on paper or in Link to Feed or another program, you always must be able to go back to past distributions, 3 years plus the current year or longer, and be able to prove out who you served on a particular day in your history of service and show that you have their name, number and household, address, and eligibility. So if we were to come out to do a site visit and ask to see those records, if the USDA or Michigan Department of Education were to come out to audit your location or audit Gleaners, and therefore come and see your distribution, you might be asked to present that paperwork or those reports that you could print out from your database. And again, all distribution records must be kept secure, confidential, and on file for 3 years plus the current year. We're keeping people's personal information, so we want to be very careful with it. If you're using paper records, it needs to be kept securely in an office space, in a locked cabinet, in somewhere that's not just easy for any person coming into your office to see, grab, or take information. All right, moving along. So like we said, we're kind of in a holding pattern for Link to Feed right now, so hold tight and bear with us. Link to Feed themselves are working on adjusting the program so it meets the needs of these changing USDA requirements. So they don't have the solution we're going with in place yet. So you're going to not see a change quite yet in Link to Feed for your own programs. Just keep doing what you're doing. We've got till the end of the month for the Link to Feed programming to kind of catch up and take place. And again, any questions about that can be directed to Christina Herrero. All right, and one other thing that we'll have available and was included in that last email to you is kind of a template of, you know, if you're using Link to Feed or if you have an outdoor kind of distribution, this is kind of a template you could use that has the required information in it without the little signature line or the sign-in lines. So it includes that eligibility statement, income guidelines, and non-discrimination statement. So this is another template that we can provide to you. All right, further USDA TFAP reminders. We do not collect social security numbers. That's personal information that we really don't need to have and don't need the burden of keeping on for people. We do not collect income or other documentation or verification of residency, citizenship status, or legal status. We cannot verify or collect any of that. Another reminder that that non-discrimination statement must be on all items pertaining to USDA, and there's a short version that we'll refer to a little bit later. And then this comes up every once in a while, so this is a good reminder that when we're talking about USDA TFAP foods and even broader to our most of our distributions models, a household is defined as, you know, a group of people who are living together under the same roof, preparing food and sharing food together. So it might not just be mom, dad, daughter, and son. It could be mom, dad, brother-in-law, friend who is staying with us for now, people who are in the same household sharing food together and preparing food together. They can be considered a household when we're asking how many people are in your household. Civil rights training we will go through in a little bit, but again, this is mandatory required training for any of your staff or volunteers who have direct interaction with clients on an annual basis, and we ask that you complete it in one of the many ways that it's available to you, whether that's through Michigan Department of Education's website, Quick reminder that if you do use the MDE website and go through the PowerPoint and take the quiz, that sometimes the easiest way to prove that you took it is to snap a picture on your phone or take a screenshot, because sometimes MDE's website won't allow you to print the results. It's a wacky thing that's been going on for too long, and I'm sorry I don't have a better solution for it. But an easier way might be going through the PowerPoint presentation that we provide to you and the one-page double-sided checklist that'll have your volunteer or team members sign off that they took the training. Or should you have groups of volunteers or a volunteer that is kind of just a one-time helper, instead of going through the whole civil rights training with them, you can give them an abbreviated day of distribution training. That's a short checklist, and it has them sign their name at the bottom to prove that they did the orientation and went through the abbreviated civil rights training. And please, we do ask that you provide us a copy of at least one of your trainings. By being on this meeting today, you personally are getting trained up, but we do expect that you take this back to your greater team and train up the rest of your team members as well. All right, and this should be pretty recognizable, although it'll be a little bit different for some of you seeing this. The "And Justice for All" poster, which includes the non-discrimination statement, must be posted and visible at all your distributions. Again, this might be something that you might want to consider getting laminated or having out on a table or posted somewhere on a wall, wherever you can find a place for it while we're operating outside. This new version includes a picture of the USDA building in DC, not the Statue of Liberty, which is the slightly older version. So if you don't have this new version yet, we're gonna work with you to make sure you eventually get it, so you can have the most up-to-date version. And we do ask that you keep it in the large version, which is 11 by 17, not the smaller regular paper size, which is 8 by 11. So we want the big poster format. And then another requirement, of course, is that you're keeping your hours of operation posted and visible so that people walking up to your distribution, or if your building's closed on a particular day, they can still see how and when they can come and get food from you. This is nothing new. The language support plan is another requirement. This plan must be in writing. This is a template that we've given you in the past and we'll give you again. And it's basically just you having a plan in place should folks come to your food distribution who speak a different language than you. And that plan could involve you having bilingual staff or volunteers on hand. It could mean using this I Speak poster guide, which at least gets you to the point of understanding which language they're speaking. Downloading Google Translate on your phone so you can speak to it in English and it comes out in Spanish, and the participant can do vice versa. So it's just having some kind of plan in place showing that to the best of your ability, you're going to help people who you might not easily be able to communicate with. And of course, if you're in neighborhoods that have a greater population of folks who speak a different language, that you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you outreach to bilingual volunteers who could help, or translate materials into that language so you can make those materials available to your large portion of a population who might speak that different language. Similarly, you are required to have an outreach plan in writing. Again, this is a template we've shared with you in the past, but a reminder of what this means is that you have a plan in place to spread the word about what you're doing to the community. We don't expect you to serve the world. You can still have your set requirements of maybe you have to live in the city of Detroit or within these zip codes, because nobody has unlimited funds to serve people. But your outreach plan should and can involve posting your hours of distribution and your requirements for participation. It could include if you conduct reminder calls or text messages, or if you put out flyers or brochures or have something on your website or Facebook page. That's all part of your outreach plan. But anytime you are doing outreach, whether that's on your website or whether you have brochures and flyers or something in your church bulletin, please incorporate this short form of the non-discrimination statement. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Throw that in the bottom of the text somewhere. put it on your website somewhere. It's just got to be present if you participate in the USDA food program and you conduct outreach to include that one short sentence. A few other reminders, the 90-day policy, meaning that when you get USDA food from us, you must distribute it within 90 days of receiving it from gleaners. It's not meant to just kind of sit in your storage area. It's meant to get out to the people who need it. And part of the other requirement of helping us do that is labeling USDA food. So when you have food in storage, your team should know what's USDA food versus what's not. That could be you have a separate section for storing USDA food, or it could be as simple as putting a Post-it note on that box of USDA peanut butter or on the freezer to show that you've got USDA catfish in there on this date. Something to designate in storage what's USDA food so that your team members are aware of what it is and the fact that it's got to be out of here within 90 days. Your clients, the people who are getting this food from you, don't need to care less. They don't need to know that it's USDA food. So you don't have to worry about marking each jar or each can. Your clients don't need to know, but just when it's back in your storage space, does it have to be labeled USDA? And of course, you're going to know that when you get your invoices and when you place your order, because it'll come out in that different USDA category. You'll be able to go back to past invoices and see whether that product was USDA or not. And then, of course, practicing first in, first out, which is a good practice for all of us anyway, making sure that what you got in first goes out first and you keep rotating that product in your inventory. And then a good practice for all of us that I know everybody needs to work on, including our own team, is written procedures. Having something in writing that you can pass along to your team members. So heaven forbid you get sick or you need to step back from the program and allow somebody to step up from it to it, that you have something in writing that you can pass along about how you operate, how to call gleaners, how to reach out to Forgotten Harvest, where the keys are to, your records. All that information should be in writing so it can be easily passed along. So if something happens, your food distribution doesn't stop happening. All right. And then finally, a call out to our faith-based agencies. You are required to do a couple extra steps to participate in the USDA food program. One of these is posting this notice, which is a notice of beneficiary rights. And what this is telling your clients, and we suggest that you fill this out with your information at the top. You'll see our information at the bottom. What this is telling your clients is that if they come to you and need food, but don't really feel comfortable getting food from you because you're a religious or faith-based organization and maybe their beliefs are different, that you, to the best of your ability, are going to refer them to somewhere else where they're more comfortable getting food. So it could be that organization down the road that you're familiar with. It could be telling them to call Gleaners or telling them to call 211 United Way. And that way, you're not just leaving them hanging or feeling kind of awkward or on the fringes. You're helping refer them to somewhere else where they might be more comfortable. The other form that we always include with this poster, then this poster should be it can be placed next to your And Justice for All poster. It's something that also needs to be visible to your clients at your distributions. You keep in your back pocket another form, which is the referral request form. So in the case that you do have to refer somebody to a different location, you're taking note of it. Or if somebody were to make a complaint to you about your food distribution, you can take a note of it. Because occasionally we do get complaints, but by you taking note of what happened and what action you took, I helped John Smith by referring him to Gleaners to find a different food pantry. If you take note of that, you can always refer back to the action you took. So if a complaint ever comes up, you can say, you know what, we tried to help John Smith as best we can. This is the action we took on that particular date. So again, those extra steps for faith-based agencies only. And then a quick overview of what you need to display at your distributions in one form or the other. The And Justice for All poster should be visible. The USDA food program non-discrimination statement, eligibility statement, and income guidelines. And then if you're faith-based, that written notice of beneficiary rights should be posted visible at all your distributions. We got some questions at our meeting yesterday about, we're doing mobiles and a drive up, and if I just post this, 8x11 sheet where cars are pulling up, nobody's going to be able to see it. That's true. COVID's kind of thrown a wrench in a lot of things. If people were coming up to your counter and you had this posted right there where they could see it, that would have been, just easy enough. But because we're having a lot of these mobile or walk-up distributions and everybody's social distancing, we don't expect you to create this huge billboard and blow up these posters. If you have the ability to do so, great. But most of us do not. So make sure they are posted somewhere where people can see that there's intentional signage at your distribution. And then perhaps if they ask to see it closer, you can have additional printouts that you could provide to them or show them on your clipboard a little bit closer than at the side of the road. So it needs to be displayed. We realize it's not going to be clear for everybody, but please make sure you're doing the work to at least have copies available, so that if people ask for more information, you could provide it to them as well. All right, so I know that was a lot of information. In a moment, I'm going to ask Anne-Marie and Sarah if you have any questions that maybe I could touch on real quick before we head into the civil rights training. But the next important step, once this is done, is we're going to make sure you have this link, which is a link to the updated food program agreement. So I'll be showing that to you in a moment. And you can complete, again, the agreement online, and it gets emailed to you and it gets emailed to me. Or if you need a hard copy, we can make that available to you as well. So Anne-Marie and Sarah, is there anything we want to touch on right now, or we can always also get to some questions at the very end? We're good? We're good.
We're good.
All right. So again, folks, we will have an opportunity at the very end to answer more questions, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything big for our training right now. And let me, while I have you, I'm going to share a heads up of what this program agreement looks like. So you should be seeing my screen. This is the link we'll be providing to you. It's going to have at the top the reminders of what the changes are to the program. It's going to have downloadable documents for the USDA food program packet, which is all of the templates that we've talked about today, including the self-declaration sign-in form that's been updated. And then it's going to ask you to go through the agency agreement, which is everything we've discussed today. And it will even give you the opportunity to click on these links to download the templates in the moment. So if you need to download the language support plan or outreach plan template, you can click on them here. Same thing with the faith-based written notice of beneficiary rights poster. At the bottom, it's going to ask you to fill out your agency reference number, your agency name, your email, and a signature. I know everybody's going to slaughter their signatures unless you're really good at this. You can see mine is gibberish, but it's a signature. And then when you hit submit, two things are going to happen. It's going to send you a copy of this to your email, and it's going to send us a copy at Gleaners. So if you do it online, all you have to do is hit submit, and we all have copies now. We're all good. If you choose to do it in a hard copy, we can touch base with you via email later as well. All right. So moving along, I'm going to jump right into civil rights training. I know I'm preaching to the choir on this, but it's an annual requirement. So we're going to go through it quickly and have some time for questions at the end. So let me share that screen with you so we can get on with our day. Okay, so this is, again, the annual civil rights training that we are required to provide to you. And again, by participating in this today, you are fulfilling your required training, but we do expect that you take this training back to your team members, either share this PowerPoint or share the checklist, and make sure the rest of your team members participate in this training, which is the annual requirement for everybody. The goal of this training is to discuss equal treatment for all, provide knowledge of rights and responsibilities, discuss how we can eliminate illegal barriers that we may or may not be aware of at our food distributions, promoting dignity and respect, and reviewing what it means to be part of a protected class, which include those by race, language, color, national origin, gender, disability, age, and religion. All right, so we are going to talk about some types of discrimination in this training, and just for a quick overview of a definition of discrimination is the unfair treatment of a person or group of people based on their protected class that we just talked about, and it can be intentional or unintentional through neglect. So a couple definitions. One is disparate treatment or intentional discrimination, which occurs when people make plans or rules as part of their food distributions that might intentionally treat some groups different than others based on their protected class. So an example of this could be where one religious group is denied service at a food distribution because their beliefs do not match the religious teachings of the group that is distributing the food. Another form of discrimination is disparate impact or unintentional discrimination, which could happen when a program makes a decision about how they're operating that they don't realize unfairly affects protected classes in a way that results in them receiving less. So an example of this could be that at your food distribution, you have an immigrant population that speaks a different language, and you ask them to wait until later in the day when your interpreter can join you and help them check in. What this creates potentially is a situation where there's less food that's available later on in the day during your distribution. And so that group of people gets less food than they would have gotten if they had just been served when they got in line. And then the third type of discrimination that this training reviews is reprisal retaliation, which happens when a person or the whole organization acts so that specific individuals or groups are denied the same opportunities or benefits as others in response, in retaliation to a person's actions, comments, or behaviors. So an example of this might be, perhaps somebody complained about your program or filed a complaint, and therefore you or a member of your team kind of treats them or their family and friends differently or gives them kind of the cold shoulder. And so you are treating them differently in retaliation. All right. Eligibility requirements are not a form of discrimination. So here's an example of what's not considered discrimination. You can have a program in place that you put in place with specific rules and guidelines because, again, nobody has unlimited funds to use. So an example of this would be the CSFP program for seniors, like the Focus Hope boxes. This is a government program specifically for seniors over the age of 60. So it's not considered age discrimination because a 59-year-old can't get the food box. The rules of the program involve an age requirement. So it's not discriminating against people who are younger than the age of 60. It's just a program specifically for seniors over the age of 60 to support that population. This should go without saying. There's some obvious ways this happens and not so obvious ways. Sexual harassment is of course absolutely prohibited. So the obvious ways might be, the unwanted or unwelcome sexual favors, jokes, comments, behaviors, touching. The not so obvious ways could be, in the jokes that might come up. We certainly have clients coming out to food distributions who come out a lot, and maybe we become more familiar or friendly with them and they know us and we know them kind of thing. But that's not across the board. So you might be joking around with somebody who gets your humor, but the other people on the fringes who don't know you don't get your humor. So just something to consider reflecting on with your team, that it's not always this overt or intentional way of making people uncomfortable, but sometimes it happens just because we get maybe overly comfortable with certain people. So a reminder to act professional for everybody while we're distributing food. Excuse me. Collection and use of data. A reminder that all records must be kept for 3 years plus the current year and kept secure and confidential. I won't linger on this because we've already reviewed the non-discrimination statement and that it needs to be present and visible. Same thing with the And Justice for All poster and hours of operation. Complaints, everybody has the right to file a complaint. If somebody's unhappy with your service or the way you're doing something, we don't have to stand in their way of them filing a complaint. The way they can do that is sometimes they might call Gleaners, or the information on the And Justice for All poster tells them where they could file a complaint online or via snail mail. So oftentimes what happens if we get a complaint into our office is we will listen to the person, listen to their complaint or their frustration. And if it's about one of your food distributions, we work to reach out to you to explain what we've heard, see if there's a misunderstanding or if there's something we can brainstorm together of how to avoid that kind of confusion. 9 times out of 10, the frustrated phone calls we might hear are food recipients who didn't understand the rules at the food distribution. Something was unclear to them, so it made it look like they were being treated unfairly or differently from other people. So 9 times out of 10, it's a communication thing or a miscommunication thing. So just something to be mindful of as you're posting your rules and sharing your distribution rules to your clients. Compliance reviews. These could occur, we come out and do site visits with you, or now more so virtual visits. MDE, which is the Michigan Department of Education, who oversees this USDA food program for our state, could come out to review your location, or even the USDA, and they can come out announced or by surprise. And typically what they're looking for is, are you storing your food properly? Are you having fair and just food distributions? Are you using the up-to-date self-declaration form we've provided you? Are you repacking food without an official clean room, because that's a no-no for the USDA? So those are some of the things that they might look for if they happen to do a drop-in visit with you. And then reasonable accommodations of people with disabilities. So even if you do not have a handicap accessible facility, you're making the right moves to have alternative arrangements. So it could be, especially right now, you're bringing food from your building out to a car or to the person. You're allowing for proxy pickups, so you're allowing somebody's neighbor or family member to pick up for them. Or you're considering home deliveries for those folks who just cannot make it out of their home. And then you're considering other arrangements such as sign language interpreters if you have a number of people coming to you who sign, and allowing service animals at your facility for people who require service animals. We've already been through language assistance. And then a quick note on conflict resolution. So again, it's a really good best practice to make sure that you're posting your rules and your hours of operation so people are aware of how they can get food from you and what the requirements are. But we all know that conflict happens, that especially now it's a stressful time during COVID. We are all stressed out and maxed out. But even beyond that, it's stressful having to go get food from a food distribution. You don't want to be in that position. So we are going to have frustrated or angry or upset clients. Try your best to remain calm, listen to their concern, be empathetic, try to explain your rules and expectations of the food distribution, and then make sure your team members know who they can go to. I use this example all the time. Go to Anne Marie. Have somebody at your food distribution who's kind of like the person who can ease out a difficult situation. So let your team members know who they can go to in difficult situations. And then, of course, be ready to get help should the situation arise where maybe somebody becomes violent or makes threats, which could involve escalating all the way to calling the police. Heaven forbid those situations happen, but we know sometimes things could escalate that way. Customer service. Treat everyone with dignity and respect. Be patient and polite. Don't be afraid to apologize and explain the house rules. Ensure equal treatment in service. And no special favors. This, I know, again, we're preaching to the choir because everybody knows that a special favor is not a secret. And if you do something special for one client, everybody's going to know about it. So it's not even worth it. So be fair and appropriate to all of those you are serving. And then another quick call out to our faith-based organizations, some do's and don'ts. It is acceptable, of course, as a religious organization to have, you know, a cross on the wall or a menorah out or, you know, religious paraphernalia that's part of your facility there. Having religious materials available on the side, or if somebody's asking for a prayer for themselves, stepping aside to pray with them. But it would be unacceptable to require folks to pray before they get food from you. It would be unacceptable to include your religious materials in the box so people don't even have a choice about receiving it. So a couple examples, and if you need other help kind of going through what is or is not acceptable, you can always reach out to us. And that is our civil rights training. So again, you're trained up on that. Congratulations. We do expect that you take that back to your team, whether you use the full PowerPoint or if you use the checklist that we'll provide to you again. Those are all things that you can go through with your own team members and make sure they do on their own or as a group. I just copied in the JOT form link. So this is a link that you can click on to go to the USDA food program agreement. So again, you can do this now and sign off on it, and it gets sent to us and it gets sent to you. Or if you'd like to hold tight, we're going to be following up in an email, and I'll include the PDF version of the agreement in the attachment. So you can do it online, or you can download, sign, and get back to us. That pretty much completes our USDA food program training and civil rights training for today. I will allow time for some questions, but for now I do want to show our appreciation, our gratitude for hanging in there with us, for taking this training. Please, please, if you have questions that we haven't answered today or can't get to in the next few minutes, follow up with us. We're going to brainstorm with you and make sure to help you out and figure out these changes. But thank you again. I hope you all have a great day. If you want to get on with your morning, go your own way. Otherwise, we'll stick around and answer some more questions for you. So thank you all very much. I'm going to allow you to unmute yourselves if you have questions. All right, you are now allowed to unmute. Just be mindful that other people might be trying to talk at the same time as you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We've had a couple people at our pantry when people were allowed in the pantry. They have walked off with food, and we have caught them stealing, say, a turkey or something. We have stopped sending, allowed them to not come anymore to our pantry. Is that within regulations?
So you are, of course, allowed and empowered to set safety rules and theft protocol for your pantry. So certainly in mind of being fair to everybody, if you have somebody repeatedly abusing those rules, it is certainly within your right, especially when it comes to theft and safety, to say, you know what, I'm sorry, this has been a repeated issue with you. I can refer you to go somewhere else or call United Way or Gleaners to find a different distribution, but this is behavior that we cannot allow at our food pantry. So if you have those rules there, you can always point to them and say, you know what, you're not abiding by our code of conduct. I'm so sorry. Let's find you somewhere else to go.
Well, with the car deliveries right now, we bring it out to them.
Right.
We don't have to deal with that issue right now. But
yeah. I'd say so. I think that's where a lot of people are right now with those outdoor distributions.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Any questions about those program changes or anything else with USDA?
I have a question.
Yes.
And I know that we don't have to get driver's license and things like that, but we do have to fill in their, their name and address. And I like to see the driver's license so I know how to spell names. It's not trying to do anything else, but it just makes it a lot easier if we can see their name and their address, rather than sometimes them telling, I have no idea what they're saying. So is it okay to ask for a driver's license then?
That's the perfect question, and I'm afraid I didn't touch on that like I intended to earlier. So yes, great way to put that too. It is against USDA rules to require ID for the purpose of proving that a person lives where they say they live. However, we do link to feed. We want to make sure we have, correct information on the form and that we're spelling names correctly. So it's absolutely okay to ask to see their ID for the purpose of getting spelling correct. I hope that makes sense. I know it's a fine
It makes
line,
sense.
but that's a really good question. Yes, you can ask for the purpose of checking, name spelling and all that. But if you're doing it because you need to prove out that they live somewhere and you don't take their word for it, that would be against the USDA rules. So very good question. Thank you.
I have a question. Am I unmuted?
You're
Cleo?
unmuted.
Yeah, we get a lot of families where a grandparent is essentially raising the child, although the child does not sleep there. They're dropped off in the morning, picked up in the evening or whatever. And I came across this because I've been updating the link to feed files. And so a person who's living, for instance, in a senior center will claim 2 or 3 people in that household. How do we deal with that? Both for the record keeping, I mean, I think it's wonderful. They can get extra food, but they're not, does that go on in their file as the size of the household?
That's a really good question. I might lean on Christina to help me with the link to feed kind of minutia there.
Okay.
As a USDA answer, I would say, if they're preparing food for those grandkids in their home, that could very well be within, their household size to allow for those kids. But I know Christina might have a little bit more of a detailed response when it comes to linking kids in households on link to feed.
Okay, because when you put the names down, name, age, sex, on the added people, well, they don't actually live there. So
Right.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, good question. Christina, are you still on?
Yeah, I am. I was just going to say, I think we kind of do it on a case-by-case basis on that household, kind of like, how often are the kids there? Are they eating a bunch of meals? And, sometimes, we just add them, but they can be also, for instance, like Molly mentioned, linking. So if they're also on their parents' profile on Link to Feed, they could be linked to another profile. So you can have them both places.
Okay.
But I mean, if they're just eating like, 1 or 2 meals there a week, I wouldn't add them to the household. But if this is like, a grandparent who's a caregiver situation every day, maybe babysitting or whatever, then I would add them because they're picking up more food to accommodate those other people in the household.
That's kind of what we've been doing. Okay.
Good question. Anybody else?
This is Doris Haskins.
Hi, Doris.
Hi. I just want to make sure I got a clearer understanding.
Sure.
When we're doing drive-through, so when we ask them these questions, we now have to start asking them if they're eligible for the USDA.
Right.
Only the people that are eligible for USDA go on our form, because if they're not eligible, then we will be signing them up on Link to Feed.
So you do use link to feed.
Yes.
Okay. So link to feed is going to make these changes for us too. So in the link to feed program, there's going to be, you'll have the ability soon, very soon, to plug in how they're eligible. So it's going to look a little bit different than it looks today. But yes, when you're doing your outdoor distribution, you are going to have to record how they're eligible each time, which is unfortunately our COVID situation, right? If you had them in front of you in your office and you were doing link to feed intake in the moment, you could just ask them, oh, I see that they were income eligible last time. Has anything changed since last time? No, they're eligible. Let's move on. But because you're doing outdoor distribution, we can't make assumptions. And so on that sheet, maybe you write in their barcode number or their client ID if you have client service cards yet. And then, yes, you do have to record their eligibility each time, even though they might already be in your system.
Okay,
Does that
so,
answer your question?
yeah, I want to make sure. So USDA is only if we're giving them USDA food. So if we have no USDA food that particular week, we don't even need that form.
Good question. That's true. So I know a lot of folks kind of integrate USDA into their inventory, so you could easily receive a can of USDA corn, and maybe that's the only thing that participant gets that's USDA, but they still need to fill out the USDA form, or you need to fill it out for them. But if you have 0 USDA in your inventory during that distribution, it's true, you don't have to use that form that day.
Part of why I'm asking so specifically is I am the person that's in charge of the intake and separation in our storage. And yes, we do have that area that is totally just USDA, but as we're starting to migrate to non-perishable, because we were using the food boxes that had come during the summer, so it wasn't that type of a situation.
Okay.
All right. I think I have a clear understanding. Thank you.
Okay, good. And as you're putting this into practice, if questions come up, again, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of our agency relations team members or to Christina if it's specific to Link to Feed. All right, anybody else have a question this morning?
I do, Molly. Sorry.
Hi, Marlena.
Hi. Okay, so I know that you said a few minutes ago that you can't put any of like your religious material in their food box. Is that like period, or because like we'll sometimes give them like a magazine or something like that. So you're saying no, don't do that.
Correct. Specific to the USDA food program, it's a no-no to include religious materials inside the box. If you want to offer that to them on the side, not inside their box, again, I know that's a weird fine line,
Okay.
but if you want to make that available to the side, outside of their box of food, that's okay. Just can't be already packed within.
Okay. All right.
Good
Thank
question.
you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else
I
this
have
morning?
a
Hi, Matt.
follow-up question to that one. Particularly at Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter,
Mhm.
we have the Knights of Columbus that package up a box of food for our people. They'll get a turkey or a ham, and all they'll do is put a little note in there stating that this was offered through the Knights of Columbus. There's no religious pamphlet or anything in there, just a notification where it came from. Is that allowed?
Yes.
I'd say that's okay. If it's not proselytizing or, inviting people out to services or that sort of thing, I'm going to say that's okay.
We also have children that make up things and put it in, and there may be a cross on the paper or some kind of drawing, but they're wishing them well or something like that.
Gotcha.
That's okay too, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's kind of a weird gray area right there, but I'd hate to discourage kids from writing a little helpful note.
Especially when they want to, show their love to strangers that
Sure.
need help.
Sure. Yep. I would just kind of mainly be aware of any very specific religious materials. Yep. That's mainly what this rule is getting at.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else? Well, again, we'll be making this recording as well as all of the materials, as well as the online signed agreement available to you in email. I'll be working to do that by the end of the day today. So if you had folks who couldn't participate, if you had a hard time hearing me, or anything else, you can refer back to the email that we'll be sending out. And again, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, this is also new to us. So any feedback you have or challenges or best practices you figure out, let us know, because we'd love to hear it and we'd love to share it or help you brainstorm through. So please do speak up if you need anything or have questions. And we really appreciate you joining on today. I hope you have a good Friday and a restful weekend if you can get it. All right. Thank you all.
Bye. Robin.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take
Bye.
care.
Great job.
See ya.
Bye.
He has a real good coach and the defense, and that's what the